Welcome. Welcome everyone to Digital Scaling Scan launch event. Today, we're very happy to be here to present to you all the work that we have done to digitalize the scaling scan and to make it more accessible for everyone. So first of all, we would like to know who is joining us today and also that you know who is joining here. So we would appreciate if you could please share with us in the chat your name and your institution in the chat. So we see there are people from different places, from Nairobi, from Mexico, Jaime Paswell, IITA, Canada. Thank you all for joining. And now we are going to have available interpretation. So in order for you to choose what is the language that you would like to pick, this is an icon that you will see in your Zoom page. And down below, you can either choose French, English, or Spanish. Yes, just wait, please, a second. I'm listening to the Spanish language. Miguel, can you help me to just take it out, please? Done, perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the technical logistics. If you have any questions regarding the interpretation, please write on the chat, and we'll be happy to provide you support with it. So first of all, we're going to introduce you to what is scaling, and for this, we have the pleasure to have Paswell Marenia. He is a senior scientist in CIMMYT working in Nairobi. He is now leading the Avisa project. And please, Paswell, I share with you the floor.
Okay, no, thanks. Sorry, Eva. So, yeah, I was asked to talk about scaling. And the reason why Eva is talking about Avisa is that next week, actually, Eva will be down here helping us with a scaling scan on a project called Avisa. So I actually don't lead it, Eva. I only lead one component of it. But however, at CIMMYT, I also lead the team that Leonard, myself, Eva, and a few others are in, which is the Science of Scaling and Impact Pathways. I also serve as the Associate Program Director these days for Africa in our Sustainable Agri-Food Systems Program. So anyway, I've already taken too many minutes talking about myself. I was asked to talk about scaling, which is what I should do. But then I thought, is that not preaching to the choir? What did Leonard think when he said, I tell these people what scaling is? Everybody here is an expert in scaling. I think the collective wisdom in this group about scaling is very huge, and you don't need another person sitting in Nairobi trying to define and tell you what scaling is. However, the way we have understood our mission is that we have innovations, whether those are embodied, technical innovations, digital, process innovations, whatever innovation you want to think about, you can only have impact from them if they reach a certain critical mass. So that's the easy part, to say, let's reach a critical mass, because as economists like myself know, it is the critical mass that matters. But actually, that's not just economy. So I think I'm being a little bit economical with the truth there. Nevertheless, critical mass. We all know the diffusion curve, the first innovators, followed by early adopters, followed by early majority, and then the diffusion curve kind of tapers off. So it's a process, it's a path. So the way we understand scaling, and I think the way all of us understand scaling, is that it's not a straight line from here's an innovation and here's a bunch of people using it, let's go home. No, it's a complicated process involving incentives, involving policies, involving environment, business environment, involving culture, tastes, preferences, involving everything. So therefore, it's a very complex thing. And the way we are trying to understand or to get around all that complexity in our team here in CIMMYT is to say, look, why don't we then focus on a few areas such as human agency, right? That if people have the agency, they can receive information and make decisions for themselves. The other area we are thinking of a bit in strategic terms, because the team I'm talking about is still very new, is research translation. So if you're going to move technical innovations onto things that people use, then you need translation. You need to translate that into actionable things, or at least the information, the user manual, if you like, has to be in a language that everybody can use. Finally, analytics and data. The reason I say this is, for example, in the CG, a lot of us work in generating genetic innovations, varieties, and there's a concept called variety turnover, which is to say, if you are in the private sector, you'd say an old product becomes obsolete and new ones gain market share, the old ones have their market share go down. So when that happens, it's a good thing because farmers benefit from new genetics, better nutrition, all the good things, stress-tolerant varieties. But we all wring our hands all the time when you attend some of those meetings, is that there's so many good varieties, but only a small fraction of them reach scale, or there's very slow variety turnover, as I've tried to define it. So that requires analytics. You can't just talk about that endlessly. If there are poor incentives, as I was saying, for, say, seed companies to develop the business supply chains for new varieties, what is it? What is the pain point? Can you actually quantify that? And if you quantify it, maybe it's solvable. Or maybe you can solve it. Maybe you can create a coalition of actors, financiers, government, to solve the problem. But without that specificity, it's not possible. So to finish off, I'm saying that this is a complex problem. Scaling is. No one individual, certainly, not even an organization, no one organization, not even the CG has all the answers. So it requires a coalition of actors. And to cap it all, that coalition requires thinking who does what, where, and what have you. So it's a complex task. It requires division of labor, etc. So you asked me to say what scaling was. I think now you regret it because now I'm rambling on and on. But I guess you get the point. But for us, we want to kind of focus on those areas I was telling you. Farmer agency or actor agency, whoever those, not just farmers, but whatever actors are needed to take up innovations, research translation, analytics, and data systems. So I wish all of us good deliberations today. I think this is a great achievement to bring the thought process into focus using the scaling scan. I always thought it was a great tool to help people concentrate their thinking and come up with some concrete ideas to move things forward. So I think it's very useful in that regard. And I'm very happy to be with you and to share in these deliberations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pascal, for sharing words about what scaling is and the importance for it for us to make impact, no, as well. And now what we want is to know a bit more about us. And for that, I'm going to give the floor to Suelen, and she's going to present a Mentimeter in order to know more about you, so that we can all know who is here and learn from each other. Suelen.
Gracias, Eva. Bien, permítanme, voy a compartir mi pantalla. Y si me pueden indicar si estoy en el canal de idioma correcto, por favor. Okay. Okay. Ahí está. ¿Lo pueden ver? Perfecto. Bien. Eva, adelante, por favor.
Perfect. So what we're going to do now is to use Mentimeter to ask you some questions. And for this, what we need is that you go into menti.com and enter the code in here, or that you can use a QR in order to go into the presentation slide. Please tell us when you're in, by just putting an emoticon in your screen, please. If anyone has issues with going into Menti, also please share in the chat.
En el chat también se encuentra un enlace directo con el cual no necesitarían poner un código, únicamente necesitarían darle clic y se abre automáticamente para ir a la actividad. Pueden ingresar desde su teléfono celular o desde su computadora.
Has everyone been able to go in? I see a like here also in the chat. Perfect. So I think we're getting in. We can post these Menti use code in the chat so that everyone has it, and maybe we can go into the presentation already. Listo. Perfect. Menti code. They tell me that the Spanish translation is not working. I just want to confirm that everyone that is in the Spanish channel is listening to me. Nada más quiero confirmar que todos los que están en español están escuchando bien. ¿Me podrían confirmar, por favor?
Sí.
Sí.
Sí, ok, perfecto, listo. Gracias por confirmar. So now, yeah, we're going to go to the presentation. So Ellen, if you could please pass the slide. So this is our first question. Please indicate the country you're currently in. We have a very nice map here so that you can all see where we're coming from. So there will be a pin, and you just have to put where you're currently in. Oh, very nice. We now see different continents. Mexico, US, Italy, France, I guess. We have 11 answers now. A lot of people from Mexico. Very nice. Welcome to everyone. Someone in Colombia, great. Okay, 16. I know we're like 30 or so. We'll just wait a bit more. Also from Africa. I guess Nairobi is there. Yes, exactly. In Kenya. Great. So now let's pass to the next question. Thank you, Suelen. So the second question is, what kind of organization are you working for? We have CGR, other research organizations, universities, GIZ perhaps, private sector, government. Other. What would other be then? A lot of people from CGR are here attending. Donor. University also. It's always good to have different types of groups so that we can exchange more. And as you know, scaling really requires from everyone. So it's good that we're having different profiles here. Happy to have you. Perfect. Government as well. 1 minute more, and then we change to the next question.
También en el chat siguen presentándose. Bienvenidos. Ahí Iram. También sigue abierto el chat para quienes quieran presentarse por ahí.
Perfect. And so now we have 20 answers, a bit of from different organizations, and let's click on for the next slide now. Thank you, Suele. So the third question is, how familiar are you with the scaling scan? Is this the first time you hear about it? Have you heard it before but have never tried it? Or are you already a very experienced facilitator? Interesting. Happy to have a lot of people who have heard it. So we're happy that you're here. That means that you've heard good things, hopefully. Regular user. A bit of everything. Good, good. And 3 experienced facilitators. That's great, so that we can exchange experiences of when you've used it. Okay, perfect. And then the final question. From your experience, what is the biggest problem with scaling? We know that there are a couple of challenges also, as Paswell has mentioned. But from the work that you've done, what do you think is the biggest one? When we think about scaling, we think of so many things, right? Sometimes is it about people? Is it about policies, quality, quantity? We'll be interested to know your thoughts about this. Linear approaches to match how we implement projects. Enabling conditions not in place, so things don't last. Getting enough stakeholders on board. Yes, that's true. It's hard to engage with them and have commitments. But we really need that for scaling, because if we don't scale with others, then that's not really scaling, is it? Engaging the supporting environment. Effective adoption from farmers, la organización y la toma de decisiones, ensuring groups with various social backgrounds have access to scaled innovations, limited policies for the operation of projects, that's considered scaling. So a bit of different things, no? We can see enabling environment, enabling conditions, incentives, stakeholders, public policies. As we see, scaling is quite big, and it involves different interdisciplinary backgrounds and people. Thank you very much for sharing these thoughts with us. And now let's go into the next topic. So now what we're going to do is that we're going to have a panel discussion where we're going to speak about the scaling scan, so that all those people who have heard about it but do not yet know what it is can know more about not only the scaling scan as such, but also about the third edition of the scaling scan that we have developed and that you are now going to be able to use digitally. So for this, I'm going to be presenting with you first the video that introduces the scaling scan digital tool for you. Please, Soelen. Thanks.
¿Me indican, por favor? Sí.
Innovation.
¿Sí se escucha?
Innovations are necessary to achieve sustainable development goals. For example, in agriculture. However, the positive effects of innovations often don't last beyond the pilot projects. For a sustainable scaling of innovations, we must consider the context in which the scaling takes place. For example, local people have to be willing and able to support the scaling beyond the project. The scaling scan was developed exactly for this purpose. In 3 steps, project teams and partners find out what makes their innovations stick. It all starts with a scaling ambition, a clear vision of the context for scaling. Where do we intervene? Who is the target group? And how many people do we target? The second step evaluates 10 critical scaling ingredients. Some important questions to be answered are: is the innovation easy to adopt by your target group and better than alternatives? Do stakeholders recognize that innovation is needed, and are they interested in achieving the scaling ambition? And do local and national strategies, policies, and regulations actively support the scaling process? These 10 ingredients show you how favorable the context is for scaling the innovation. After this comes a third step, in which you see which ones are your weak and strong ingredients. And when you do it in a group, you can see where people have different opinions than you. This is a good base to develop a scaling strategy together. Now it's your turn. Download the scaling scan or go straight to the digital version and start analyzing your scaling ambition from your phone or laptop.
Perfect. So this was an introduction video to the digital scaling scan tool. And now, as mentioned, we're going to be presenting you 3 people that we have the pleasure to have here for our discussion panel, where we will speak about this process and about the content to develop the 3rd edition scaling scan. For this, we have first Leonard Woltering, who is a GIZ CIMMYT scaling expert. Leonard Woltering is helping colleagues achieve more and lasting impact with their work. By finding practical applications for complex theories on scaling, he has been able to support project teams in formulating scaling ambitions. Prior to joining CIMMYT, Woltering worked for ICRISAT in Niger from 2005 to 2010 on local adaptation of innovations. From 2010 to 2016, he worked for a management consulting firm and has since then been working on scaling, and he's currently doing his PhD in University in Wageningen with the topic of systems thinking and scaling. Moreover, we also have the pleasure to have here Flavia Grassi from FAO. Flavia Grassi, she is our gender expert. She's a social anthropologist who dedicated over 30 years to development work. After many years at the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, she's currently working at the Food and Agriculture Organization at the United Nations, providing technical assistance and policy advice on gender and women's economic empowerment in agri-food systems. She focuses particularly on the reduction of women's work burden, technology, mechanization, and agroecology. Flavia was also the co-author of the FAO Policy on Gender Equality 2030. We're happy to have you here. And finally, we also have Wei Sang join us. Wei Sang is a senior research fellow in the Natural Resource and Resilience NRR unit at the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI. She is the co-lead of CGR Research Initiative on Low-Emission Food Systems, also called Mitigate Plus, and holds the position of Biodiversity Expert in the CGR Environmental Health and Biodiversity Impact Area platform. She conducts policy-relevant research on the intersection between agriculture, development, nature environment, and climate change towards food systems transformation. We also are very happy to have you here. So, to start the discussion, we're going to have some questions to each of the panelists to know more about their experience with the scaling scan and about how have we built together this new third edition, which includes gender and climate change perspectives. For this, I would like to ask Leonard first the following question. Leonard, you developed the scaling scan with two colleagues from SNV, the Dutch Development Organization, in 2017. Could you please tell us why you did this and what have you learned over the last 6 years working with the scaling scan?
Yeah, thank you so much, Eva, and thank you everyone for joining, and thank you also to the other panelists for being here. Yeah, I think when we started in 2017 working on scaling, I think we realized three things. First of all, there's a lot of wrong assumptions about scaling, that everything should scale, everything can scale, scaling is always good, scaling is always sustainable, we can show how scaling works and then others do it, kind of like transferring it. Scaling is the next obvious step after the whole innovation cycle, and scaling leads to sustainable development. So these are all assumptions that are really mostly wrong, actually. The other thing is the shocking, I think, conclusion was that the results are very poor. Very few innovations actually go to scale, and very few pilots actually go to scale. So just imagine the kind of money and effort we put into this, and we keep repeating, let's go to scale, let's go to scale, but it hardly ever works. And the third thing, I think, what we realize is that there's a lot of good learnings, but they were very inaccessible, maybe in very academic circumstances, or they're also not accessible to the people that actually need it, the people that are going to be affected by the scaling, so the local actors, etc. This has to do with language and just the academic gap with practitioners, right? So then we thought, okay, maybe we should develop a tool rather than writing a paper. Let's develop a tool that is accessible for people to convey three main learnings that we could kind of distill out of everything that we read and learned. And those are really the need to refocus from the innovation to the context, the refocusing from the project environment, what you do in a project, to really the real world, because the scaling happens in the real world and the pilots and the projects happen in the project world, which are distinct worlds, if you want to say so. And the other third lesson is that we need to really understand that local actors, they are the ones that can sustain and support scaling. So whatever we do in a project is great, but it's really about them sustaining and continuing the scaling. So I'm not sure if you could show maybe that slide that I sent you. And what we did, we looked at 6 years of data from, we kind of collected data from 87 scaling ambitions with almost over 1,300 participants. And we still see, this is kind of like, you know, scoring a 5 means, okay, the enabling condition for example, for that ingredient, as you saw in the video, is good. And 1 is, let's say, bad conditions, right? And what we see is that if you take all of them together, we see a pattern that it's kind of always finance and business models, as well as government support, are always kind of holding back the scaling. And that means that over all this time, you know, that scaling projects, they really need to be much more set up in a much more broader way and taking on these issues already from the get-go. If we know already that finance and business models and government issues are going to be hampering scaling, why don't we integrate them into the project design from the beginning, right? But we tend to focus still, okay, let's see if the innovation works, let's do a lot of capacity development, and then let's go to scale. But then it's often already too late, no? Another learning is that we had a very big variety of users from local and international NGOs, research stations, and private sector. And they all wanted to use the scaling scan very differently. So, and especially with the Green Innovation Centers, I think we saw that they used it quite differently. One in Burkina Faso, they were working on many different innovations, and they used the scaling scan kind of to narrow down to 2 or 3 innovations that they wanted to focus on. And what they realized by doing that is basically seeing that the best technology is not always the most scalable. There's a big difference between having a best technology and the most scalable. And the scaling scan, I think, helped them to narrow down those good innovations that they were working on to narrow them down to the ones that are also scalable. No? Another issue I think in Ethiopia was, I think, interesting, where they used the scaling scan and found out that an innovation they had been supporting for many years is actually not scalable because of patent issues that they couldn't overcome, and so they stopped the support. Or that they looked at seed cleaning units also in Ethiopia, and they found out that, yeah, it's all going very nicely, but there are very little business models for the seed cleaners, but even other intermediaries as well. So based on that, they set up kind of a new program to focus on business model development for the seed cleaning. So it's kind of used not only as an analytical tool, but also as a decision support tool. Thanks.
Thank you, Leonard. Thank you for sharing this experience, not only theoretical, but also practical, about how the scaling scan has been used in different projects and the learnings about it. Now, I would like to address Flavia and ask, what does gender have to do with scaling, and how is it integrated in the 3rd edition?
Okay, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so let me introduce myself. First of all, I'm very happy to be here, dear colleagues, and to be able to sort of contribute to this discussion. I've worked with Leonard and Eva and also GIZ colleagues in a 3-year program to support the Green Innovation Centers in Africa and Asia, and that's where we started, where I became acquainted with the scaling scan. And where we realized that, you know, we want to achieve also gender impacts, and that is one of the ways to also achieve that. And as we were working together and we tested, I think several scaling scans were done as part of that program. We realized together with CIMMYT and GIZ that it would have been useful to strengthen the social dimension of the tool. Because often, unless you really target explicit questions on gender, on inclusivity, it tends to be overlooked. So that's what we did, and I prepared a couple of slides just to make my life easier in presenting, and hopefully also to make it easier for you to follow. So you can move on to the first slide. Thank you, Eva. So why gender and inclusivity? So as Leonard was saying, context is key when we scale. Okay, so I think that's a crucial thing. And yet we know that rural settings are not homogeneous. There's a lot of diversity, social class, age, gender, poverty levels, and so on, and that needs to be taken into consideration. We also know that there is unequal access to resources and services. So often, for example, compared to men, women's work is less visible and therefore gets overlooked in policies that also govern innovation use and access to services. So it's very important to focus on this unequal access. For example, this may result in equipment not being designed for women, wrong size, wrong shape, too heavy, whatever. Or else lack of collateral for women to invest in innovations, business environment not being gender sensitive. There's lots of possible hitches here and possible difficulties. The next one is the unequal participation in rural organizations. Again, how many women are members of local organizations? How many women have leadership positions and capacity to voice their needs? So this is, again, another essential element. And of course, the last one is the underlying social norms that affect decision-making. So here, this is about the constraining social expectations that often weigh on women, both at household level and in the public sphere. So understanding those and digging a bit deeper into what blocks from the social norms level is also important. And that sort of awareness helps for scaling, for understanding how to scale better and so on. Now, the risks here are, if these things are not looked at properly, hold on, okay, is of course, what is the appetite for risk, based on these inequalities? Or what are the capacity for an innovation's uptake? Is it wise to scale up, or should we rather scale down, depending on the target population? So these are the big questions that should be explicit. And this is why we work together on creating a social dimension in the version 3 of the tool. Okay, the next one. So we focused on 3 elements in this scaling scan version 3. We focused on clearly outlining that we needed to address social inclusion and gender responsiveness throughout the scaling scan in order to recognize, anticipate, and respond to different needs and risk appetites. We wanted to foster participation, okay, what I just said, so that different groups are involved in decision-making. And we wanted to, of course, make sure that social and economic empowerment is promoted so that capacities and confidence are equally strengthened and that people are equally provided with opportunities to access resources, employment, etc. So these are the 3 principles that we applied. Next slide. So how did we apply these? So we integrated these 3 principles throughout the scaling scan, throughout the 3 steps. First of all, by having hints. So the exclamation mark that you see on the left there is actually in all of these levels. When you go through the digital tool, there is always this exclamation mark, and it leads you to a menu which has questions, gender-related social questions, which are very useful to stir sort of thinking about potential problems. So the first one is when you construct the scaling ambition. You review positive and negative implications. And there you, for example, when you say, who is this for, this innovation that you're trying to scale up? The question comes up, for example, did you consider social differences amongst the group? Who is targeted, who is not targeted, why, etc.? Or where do you want to scale? Are there social dynamics the same as where you piloted your innovation? This is an important element. Or how many people are you trying to reach? Are you willing to deal with additional challenges, which is often the case? For step 2, when we look at all the ingredients, the enabling environment, we added some questions there too. For example, on the demand side, is the innovation desired by the target group? Or are you trying to impose an innovation? That won't work, of course. Or the business case, is the business climate conducive to gender equality? If it isn't, it won't work. Knowledge and skills, is the target group confident to use an innovation? We very often have, for example, mechanization, new tools, new equipment introduced, and women not using it. And so the big question is why? And it's to do with confidence. So what can you do to build, the user group's confidence? And finally, in the last phase, opportunities and challenges for scaling. There we have, again, questions directed and solutions in terms of tools that we advise. For example, to use a gender-responsive business model canvas, where you look at different perspectives which are social, or advice as well. So this is an overview of how we intervened in that revised scaling scan to make it more socially sensitive, and to ask so that people who do the scaling scan, the users, can really have a lot of questions that can stir their thinking. I think I stop here, and of course, any questions I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Flavia, and thank you very much for describing how is this process of not only putting an extra layer of gender, but really including it inside the scaling scan with all these questions and process and principles. For now, due to time, I will continue with Wei, but if there is any questions, please add them on the chat. I will be happy to be responding them.
Thank you.
So now, my question to Wei would be, how and why is the scaling scan being used in the Mitigate initiative? And what are the key principles for environmentally sustainability and climate change that have been integrated in the third edition? And why do you believe that those are important? Happy to hear you, Wei. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Eva. Yes, so I'm here to talk about why the research initiative on low emission food system, also known as Mitigate Plus, is involved. So I'll start by saying a few words about what the initiative is about. This initiative supports target countries in meeting their greenhouse gas reduction objectives, or NDCs, through transformative food system change without compromising food security and while delivering environmental, social, and economic co-benefits. So we're involved because we're currently using the tool in two main areas. One is that we're interested in scaling technologies and management approaches that have been identified and assessed to have high potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while simultaneously addressing other SDG targets. And so this tool really offers the analytical aspect, the decision support aspect, to help us assess those possibilities. And second, this tool complements other approaches, participatory approaches we're taking to help us structure discussions about and informed assessment of co-developed innovations in our living labs. So I think, Len already mentioned that the tool can help with analysis, decision support, but I want to, emphasize that I think this is also a great tool, engagement tool to help nudge system thinking into discussions about innovation, scaling strategy and implementation. So, Flavia, you explained why scaling tool, a scan tool needs to be more explicit about gender and social inclusion to promote social sustainability of interventions. Similarly, this new version of scaling scan has been enhanced to ensure the explicit consideration of the environment and climate. As we know, scaling technologies and practices will affect the environment, natural resources, such as water, land, air, minerals, flora, and fauna. For example, a great irrigation technology that improves irrigation efficiency, when it's taken upscale, there may be the possibility of reducing, causing overall challenge to water availability. So what's positive on the farm level, may have a negative spillover effect at the landscape level or watershed level. So the similar logic applies to many other resource types or technologies. And climate change makes access to natural resources even more uncertain. The effects of climate change on natural resources are already being felt and expected to get worse in the future. So for all these considerations and reasons, throughout the 3 steps of the version 3 of the scaling scan tool, the following issues regarding environment and climate are integrated. First, sustainable resource use. So we need to take the responsibility to make sure a sustainable use of natural resources now and in the future. We need to analyze the effect of the scaling of innovation in the quantity, quality, and access of natural resources. Second, trade-offs and uncertainty. So we need to recognize and understand that interventions will have trade-offs on natural resources, on climate, on social issues, even if they're not very clear. The effect of interventions may be delayed, may happen outside the intervention region or period, or affect other resources and social groups that were not primarily considered or targeted when the intervention was created. Third, climate mitigation. Greenhouse gas emissions, as we all know, are the major driver of climate change. So we have to ensure that scaling does not lead to more emissions. And the fourth, climate adaptation. It is important to scale innovations that increase our capacity, the capacity of the communities and the environment to adapt and to respond to climate-related stresses and challenges such as dry spells, droughts, floods, heat in the short term, but also long term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ray. Thank you for explaining what is the importance of the different principles of climate change that we have included in the scaling scan. And yeah, the challenges of analyzing the trade-offs, which is something that the climate change really puts us into perspective, as there are so many variables that we have to consider, but in the end, we have to make the decision and look forward and see which is the best option. So I would like to thank all the panelists for this discussion. We would have liked to ask more questions. However, due to time, we will have to continue. But please, if there is anyone who wants to ask something to our panelists, please add it in the chat, and I'm sure that they will be very happy to respond to it. And now, this is a very important moment for us, because it is official. The digital scaling scan together with you is officially published. Thank you everyone for participating here. And now we want to show it. We want you to know what it is. We want you to see it in order to be able to use it in the future. So for this, we're happy to have here Suelen Torres. She's training coordinator as well as a design specialist in CIMMYT, and she has been with us during this whole process to see in which way we can make the scaling scan digital and accessible as well. Suelen Torres
Gracias.
She made her master's in education, and her work focuses on the design of experiences of digital and physical learnings, combining both creative and didactic processes. currently, she's part of the training unit of CIMMYT, coordinating projects of innovation for farmers and for the development of online courses. So Ellen, I give the floor to you. We will be happy to know more about this process.
Thank you, Eva. I still don't feel confident to speak much in English, so I will speak in Spanish, and I invite you to make sure you are on the right channel, right translation channel, please. Okay. Bien. Para el proceso de desarrollo de las herramientas digitales del Scaling Scan, hemos trabajado mano a mano con el diseño centrado en el humano. El diseño centrado en el humano es un enfoque o proceso iterativo que nos ha permitido indagar en el verdadero problema y conectar con las personas al momento de desarrollar estas soluciones digitales. Como parte del proceso, hemos tomado en cuenta las necesidades de los usuarios. Hemos tomado en cuenta también las necesidades de todos los actores involucrados y hemos hecho este proceso varias fases. Hemos hecho este proceso iterativo en varios aspectos. Adelante, Eva, por favor. Bien, como parte de tomar en cuenta las necesidades de los usuarios, hemos identificado principalmente la necesidad de hacer el Scaling Scan más accesible y adaptable a las planeaciones de las diferentes innovaciones que hemos identificado en todos estos años, desde el 2017, que se creó la herramienta de Scaling Scan. También hemos tomado en cuenta la importancia de que los materiales y de la información sobre Scaling Scan sea más accesible y que pueda llegar a diferentes países de una manera muy eficiente. Como parte también de las necesidades identificadas, hemos aprendido también del scaling de otras instituciones y hemos evaluado el potencial que tiene el scaling para contextos cuantitativos y cualitativos. Como parte de los procesos iterativos que hemos tenido del scaling, hemos implementado focus groups en diferentes fases para identificar las necesidades de diferentes perfiles de usuarios. También hemos hecho la traducción a 3 idiomas y hemos revisado en diferentes fases la mejora continua de estas traducciones. Hemos hecho también test de usabilidad a través de diferentes fases y hemos integrado esta perspectiva de género y de cambio climático a nuestras herramientas digitales. Y por último, y no, no lo último, pero sí algún otro proceso importante que queremos destacar, es que hemos desarrollado herramientas complementarias a el Scaling Scan para potencializar su uso, entre otras actividades. Estos procesos han estado a lo largo, como les comentaba, desde el 2017 hasta el 2023. Desde el 2017, cuando se creó la primera versión del Scaling Scan. En el 2019 sacamos la segunda edición del Scaling Scan. En el 2022 creamos la página web. En el 2023, este año, iniciamos el desarrollo de la herramienta digital del Scaling Scan y actualmente nos encontramos desarrollando un curso de autoaprendizaje sobre el Scaling Scan. Ahora, Eva, si me apoyas para dirigirnos, por favor. Les vamos a mostrar de manera rápida, una navegación rápida de nuestras herramientas. Esta es la web de Scaling Scan que nos permite compartir una serie de materiales, noticias, información y en general recursos que están a disposición de ustedes para implementar, para incorporar el Scaling Scan en los procesos tanto de desarrollo de innovaciones como también de facilitación del Scaling Scan. Dentro de la web podrán encontrar información como, por ejemplo, nuestros cursos. Si te puedes ir, Eva, a la parte de los cursos, por favor. Aquí, por ejemplo, tenemos tenemos publicado un preview de nuestro curso, lo que será nuestro curso en línea, algunos datos importantes, junto con una lista de espera a la cual ustedes se pueden suscribir y recibirán información en el momento en el que ya esté disponible el registro para el curso de Scaling Scan. Adicional, también en esta misma página pueden encontrar otros cursos que les recomendamos. Los invitamos a visitar nuestra web. Dentro de la web también podrán encontrar nuestra comunidad a la cual se pueden inscribir. Les invitamos, les hacemos una gran invitación a registrarse en la página de Scaling Scan y ser parte de nuestra comunidad para recibir notificaciones, intercambiar experiencias. También podrán encontrar el acceso directo a la herramienta digital e interactiva del Scaling Scan. Para el acceso, ustedes necesitan crear su cuenta y una vez que la creen, tendrán acceso completo a las herramientas, a la herramienta interactiva de Scaling Scan. Bien, les agradezco mucho la atención. Les cedo la palabra a Eva para que nos platique un poquito más sobre el uso de la herramienta interactiva del Scaling Scan.
Muchas gracias, Suelen. Thank you very much, Suelen. Yes, and as Suelen was mentioning, in the Scaling Scan webpage after you register, you will have access to the digital Scaling Scan tool, which is what we have done is that the workbook that you may have previously known that you could print, now we have make it digital. So it's more or less like an app, and there are 3 different types of assessments that are being done. Now we have uploaded the rapid and the standard Scaling Scan, and very, very soon you will also see the 3rd edition. In this, as you can see, you can include all the information that you used before in a physical form, but now in a digital format. You can access it from your phone also. It's usable. We have made the sizes so that it also fits your phone. So if you are going to the field, if you're in different areas, you can still make use of it. The rapid Scaling Scan lasts for around 30 minutes. It's a quick version so that you analyze the different ingredients, you make your ambition and the steps that you want in your scaling strategy in order to plan the scaling of your innovation. But if you want a more deep analysis, then you can go into the standard scan, which can take from 3 hours to 3 days, depending on the level of depth that you want to take in it. So now Leonard has already shared the link in the chat of the Scaling Scan webpage, as well as the link of the digital Scaling Scan tool will be there. You should just register, and so Ellen said. And now we just want to give, for the last minutes of this session, the floor to Leonard Woltering to say some final conclusions of this event, and finally to Wei Sang to conclude this event. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation in this event, and hopefully you'll be able to use all these tools that we're very happy to now have for you. Leonard, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a very important moment for me personally as well. I mean, we've been working on this for the last 6 years, and it's so nice to see, for example, Jorge and Jaime, who were among the pioneers 6 years ago in Oaxaca and in Chiapas in the south of Mexico, to work with this, that they're also here, and a lot of other collaborators. So it really became a big teamwork, and it's really nice to see not only the people have, we have not only scaled the Scaling Scan, but also kind of like the collaboration around it now with FAO involved and GIZ and SNV. and then the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT. And then, of course, also the Mitigate initiative, the digital initiative is involved, and then the AgriLac initiative. So it's really like a huge, it became a big thing now. So that's really nice to see. And I'm really happy about that. I really want to thank all of you to make this happen. Like I said, we are dealing with a huge problem. I mean, a lot of people are thinking to apply scaling, or they want to scale their innovation, but they're just not succeeding. So we really need to get much more knowledge about scaling out there and be much more intentional about scaling. And I think the scaling scan has been, well, maybe a drop in the ocean so far, but I think it's a bit of a small contribution that we were able to do. Yeah, well, like Swellen showed, there's an online course going to be available soon, and we're going to upload this week then the 3rd edition. Just go and browse through it. You can just put in some dummy figures and numbers just to get a bit of an idea of what we have. You can also go through the rapid scan that gives you a very quick idea of what we want to do and what scaling scan is about. And then you can use it with your team, or even during a workshop. Now, let's do a quick rapid scaling scan. What are the key issues for scaling? And there's often very many aha moments in those kind of meetings. Like I was saying in the chat, we're also writing down a paper on 6 years experience with the scaling scan. So that should be forthcoming. You should look out for that. And yeah, I think thank you so much to all. And thank you so much, especially also to GIZ, who has been supporting a lot the scaling scan in the last 2 years. And now that has been picked up by the Mitigate initiative. So thank you also very much to Wei for the confidence in that, and yeah, the kind of ready application in our climate initiative. So thank you for that. And if you permit me, Eva, I would just hand over immediately to Wei. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leonard. I just want to say a big congratulations to you, to your team, for this collaboration between research organization, development organizations to develop a tool, a practical tool that speaks a universal language. I think we'll get a lot of uses, so very promising future. I maybe just one final caveat note. I think we all know that the problem of applying inappropriate methods for scaling is huge, and that it's important that we include as many stakeholders and people as possible in improving their actionable knowledge in scaling for sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much to everyone, and thank you very much for the panelists, to Flavia from FAO, to Leonard, to Wei, to Swellen. Thank you very much, everyone, and well, hopefully see you in the Scaling Scan community. Have a very nice day. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Eva, for the great moderation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.